Welcome back, everybody. I'm the Dr. Bob Lee from 107.5 WBLS, your #1 station for R&B. And catch me on right after the Quiet Storm on BLS. You're surviving 20 years of domestic abuse. Ivette Attaud, she turned her negative into a positive, using her experience to help others. Now, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, Ivette has returned to Open to share more. Ivette, we welcome you back to Open Studios.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Now, you've been through 20 years of this.
Well, the abuse, I've been out of the abusive relationship for 20 years, but I didn't leave that relationship unscathed. There are a host of issues that survivors of domestic violence and abuse deal with, and one of them happens to be mental health issues.
Yeah. So although you may have broken away from the actual physical violence, the mental health issue continues for years.
Yes, it can be lifelong. It can be lifelong. And one of the things that survivors do deal with is post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. When I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder over 15 years ago. Up until that point, I did not think that there was anything wrong with me. I didn't understand what PTSD was. And I only thought that men who had seen combat were the only ones that went through it.
You hear a lot about that.
But that's not true. Anyone that has been through a traumatic experience, PTSD is an anxiety disorder, and it's the body's normal response to abnormal trauma. So it can be...
Say that again.
It's the body's normal response to abnormal trauma. It can be a rape, it could be a mugging, someone that's been exposed to domestic violence as a child, have seen, maybe saw their mother or their father be abusive or be abused. It happens to anyone, male, female, child, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
and you may think that from you looking at the other person who's been through this trauma, you may see that they look like they're normal, they're going through everyday life, but they have some deeply rooted problems within.
Right. We survivors have a tendency to internalize what they've gone through, which is not good because, like I said, I didn't know that I had post-traumatic stress disorder until something happened that caused me to reach out to seek help. Up until that point, I was afraid to go get help because it could be used against me in family court by my abuser. So some of what I try to help people understand is you may not have it, you may not know that you have it, but there are certain symptoms and signs that to pay attention to. Part of surviving an abusive relationship is being able to get control again. And that includes taking control of your health.
Yvette, give us a description of some of the things that you have gone through and some of the things that you've done to climb out of this. Does it help you to talk about it all the time?
It always helps me. It helps me to talk about it. It definitely helped me to write about my experience. Writing about my experience caused me to remember things that I had blocked out. And it was healing.
Bring it to the forefront.
Very healing.
Let people know about it.
Yes.
So some of the things you went through, you were living with a young man. You were married?
I was married. I was married to him. We lived on Fort Bragg in North Carolina. It's a difficult situation to live in because they're taught, being in the military, they're taught to kill. They're taught they have a combative state of mind.
Now, you worried about that? Were you worried about that then?
No, because I didn't understand that that's what it was. There was no one there to tell me that, be careful or this is what can happen.
This guy's trained to kill.
Right. It didn't, I would never have thought that my husband would do that to me. What I learned was that they don't know how to switch it off when they're with family, when they're with friends. At least this particular person didn't. So some of the things that I went through that set off my post-traumatic stress disorder was the constant verbal abuse. It doesn't always have to be physical violence. It can be verbal abuse, it can be emotional abuse. Certain smells will trigger an episode.
Certain smells?
Even down to certain smells, sights, sounds. The smell of a hospital, for me, can set off a trigger. Because part of my trauma was in the hospital. So anything that reminds the survivor of their trauma is a trigger. If we're not aware of that or conscious of it, it can cause us to have an episode where it's this uncontrollable rage. You're not sleeping at night. Night terrors, which is very, very different than nightmares.
If you don't mind me asking, what are some of the things he said to you?
I was 21, had one child already, pregnant with twins. You're old, you're fat, you're used up, nobody would want you.
Wow.
And that's something that a lot of them do say, that based on my experience of other survivors that I've spoken to, if you try to leave me, I'll kill you. He did follow me to New York, and he did, you know, he tried to make good on his threat up here as well as in on Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
So
what are some of the things you had to do? Get a restraining order?
I wasn't able to get a restraining order while I was living on Fort Bragg. The military at that time had a hands-off policy about domestic violence and dealing with it. Certain movies I can't even watch because it kind of makes me uncomfortable. Not as much as it did, you know, well, years ago it would set it off pretty badly, but it's not as bad now because I was able to manage it and control it.
Well, how were you able to transform this into something positive?
15 years ago, over 15 years ago when I was diagnosed with PTSD, the doctor, the mental health professional that I sought, she helped me to understand what PTSD was. She helped clear up the myths and the misconceptions that I had about post-traumatic stress disorder. So and she helped me to start talking about it. I hadn't talked about it up until that point with anyone. So that was step one. Step two was understanding what domestic violence is. And the hardest thing I've had to do was to stand in front of the mirror and actually say to myself, Yvette, you were abused. This happened to you. Stop ignoring it. Right, this is going on. Stop ignoring it. Embrace it. And it has become a part of who I am. Why? Because I was able to take it and be able to help other people understand.
Took it to the next level. Now you have this book out, My Life, My Soul. And this is it right here.
Yes.
Give me a quick synopsis.
My Life, My Soul is about my experience with an abusive relationship, which started when I was 16 when I met my abuser. And I chronicle my journey from being a naive 16-year-old, meeting this young man, to actually marrying my abuser, and all the things that I went through while I was married to him up until I left. And that's what part one, which is surviving, is all about.
Are there any things leading up to marriage that maybe kicks off the notion that this person has a potential to become an abuser?
It's important to understand what a narcissistic personality is, and it's true to abusers. Abusers are narcissistic, but not all narcissistic people are abusive. And it's that selfish, self-centeredness that person has, that your partner has. It could be having two faces, one in public, one in private. Being concerned with their own superiority and always wanting to step on you, per se, you know, to elevate themselves. There's that's outside of the physical violence. My abuser hit me the first time when I was 16.
Wow.
So without me understanding what domestic violence was, what dating violence was, without someone to tell me something other than don't date him because I don't like him, that did not help me make that decision. I don't know any 16-year-old.
You have a lot of other things happening. You're in love, you know, you're 16.
Right.
And, you know, you're feeling things that you didn't feel before in your life.
But I was grown. I can handle my own business. So for someone to say, Yvette, don't date him because I don't like him, I'm going to do exactly the opposite of what you say.
Don't go down the block. There's a man around the corner with a bat. He's going to hit you in the head. But you need to go down there and see.
We need to go down there and see for ourselves. Going into that, it helped me see that we serve a purpose on this earth, and we don't go through things for nothing. It's just understanding why we're going through it and being able to take that and turn it into a positive.
So you went through something rough and you came out with something beautiful.
Definitely.
What can people do to fight against domestic violence, and where can people get the book?
Well, the book can be purchased through MLMS Publishing, which is my company, as www.mylifemysoul.com. And I like having that personal contact with my readers, so I will be more than happy to autograph them if anyone orders through the website. Where people can get help. So talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, or even admitting something is wrong with you, is very hard for us as survivors. We've spent years, months with someone telling us always that something is wrong with us. So we have to at least want to be able to take charge of our health by talking to your doctor. Telling your doctor what you've been going through. You've been, having this uncontrollable rage. You always want to hurt somebody. Even thoughts of suicide, which is really important.
Give us a website.
Excuse me, www.mylifemysoul.com.
Ivette Attaud, thank you so much. My Life, My Soul, author. All right.